Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Don't Be a Man About It. They say laughter is the best medicine, but is it really? Gianmarco Soresi, your friendly neighborhood comic, is here with me today, and I'm so happy that you accepted my invite to the show. Gianmarco, hi.
Hello. I don't know if it's the best medicine. I've tried it, and I think there's lots of other good medicines out there we should take first.
100%, we're going to talk about it. But before we dig in, I'm curious, how is your heart doing today?
My heart?
Yeah.
What a question! What a opening! It's my girlfriend's going out of town for 2 weeks today, and I could have had breakfast with her, but I decided to do this instead. So my heart is vulnerable. It's
Oh,
it's uh it's a little melancholy.
missing. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can I make it more how can I make it more cheerful? If that's the word.
Listen, I've been asking myself that question for decades now. So maybe we'll find out. We'll see.
Let's hope that. Gianmarco, the reason why I invited you to be here on the show is that I saw or came across your video in one of your shows where you're talking about depression and men going to therapy.
Mhm.
So how is Josh doing? Is he better? Did he go to therapy finally?
No, some people they really won't go. I don't know what they're waiting for. They've seen some movie maybe that turned them off, or they had a bad therapist. There's a lot of bad therapists out there. We forget with these kind of professions. It's like going to eating a bad sandwich that your mom made and being like, sandwiches suck.
And you get traumatized for the rest of your life. You'd never
Oh
eat
yeah.
that sandwich again.
Sure. So I don't know. I mean, it's men and women, of course, but I just know some men, it's not in the cards. Maybe someday, maybe after the third divorce, they'll go, okay, you know what? Maybe it's me,
Maybe it's time.
but
Maybe it's time.
maybe it's time. But I mean, I've seen it. I had my stepfather, he was from very conservative part of America, and he didn't go to therapy until the marriage was on the rocks. And then probably too late at that point, but sometimes that's what it takes.
It's very common that people, especially men, when they go into a bad experience with a therapist, that's it for them. How do you think, or what is the best way for men to be more comfortable in giving therapy a second chance?
I feel like part of it, you just have to go and try. It's partly just like understanding what it is and what it's not. I think there's a common misconception. It's like you go to therapy to find other people to blame for your own problems. And it's more just like understanding what it is. It's not like a miracle thing. It's not something that's going to make all your problems go away. It's about just kind of managing your life and understanding how you feel about where you are in any given moment. So I think it's just partly like the understanding of what it is. And I think, unfortunately, in the media, there's all these tropes about Sigmund Freud that kind of people who've never really gone to therapy, they think of it as just like, oh, you're going to talk about my mom and we're just going to look at ink blots. Like for so long, ink blots, you know what I'm talking about? Like that was at least on like American TV, there was ink blots. That's what represented therapy. And so it made it seem, kind of silly and trite and meaningless. So I don't know, other than to say men in therapy tell men not in therapy, give it a shot. But I think it speaks just to a deeper toxic masculine problem of not talking about your feelings. And it's strange. I don't see how men don't look at other men who bottle everything up and go, oh, I don't want to be like that. So it's
Wow,
just
that's
recontextualizing it. So it's not a weakness. It's not a weakness to talk. Uh, it's very deep. It's a deep problem. Listen, if I could have solved it, I would have gotten Josh to go a long time ago. Uh, Yeah, I'm trying to. There's one friend in particular in my mind right now, where like he's an angry fella, and his family's messed up. He's doing some drugs, fine, but some of the drugs are scary, and he just sees it as that's not going to help,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm not sure.
Wow, you did. Wow. Especially the part when you said, why don't men look at other men in therapy and say, whoa, I want to be like that. I think it's a combination between fear and anger and anxiety and what would people say if I go to a therapist. It's a combination of all of that. And then what would my family say, especially that the reason why men reach where they are in terms of depression or any issues, it's coming from the family. So I think there's a huge gap between being aware of something. I know I'm depressed and I know that I need help, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a degree of like, I mean, it depends. Like if you're in New York City, everyone's in therapy. It's very funny. I did a show recently, and there was someone in the audience talked about being on antidepressants, and I asked them which one, and they said probably maybe Zoloft or Lexapro, and all these people in the audience were like, "Woo!" And I thought, like, that's so crazy because not that long ago, antidepressants were, if you were on them, you certainly weren't going to tell anybody about it, let alone go woo at a comedy show. So these things can really, really shift. But I do worry that therapy, along with I don't know, like eating salads, is becoming a thing in America where there becomes this political divide too, where it's kind of like the liberal East West Coast elite, they go to therapy, and conservative guys don't, and that's not good.
Yeah.
I also think there is this issue that a lot of people bring up every time, and it's money. Therapy can be insanely expensive. I started at a place in New York called the White. Oh, I had it as a kid. I had bad therapists as a kid. We can go to that later. Just not like abusive, but just not good. And when I finally started therapy, I was an actor in New York. My income was zero. My parents were helping me, thank God. But I went to a place called the White Institute, and it's like a beauty school. Will give you discount haircuts. The White Institute, it was therapists, psychologists getting their fourth degree, and because it was part of their degree, it was very discounted.
Okay.
So I tell people here, I had 2 sessions a week, at 2 hour, 15-minute sessions a week in the beginning for $30, which is
Wow.
unheard of. And
Was
and
it
that was
good
that.
therapy?
What was that?
Was the quality good? Was it good therapy?
I lucked out. I got a woman that I liked very, very much, that I'm
Nice.
still with now. But like, it's lucky, and I was, I part of the thing is, this was at a school, and I do think if I had not liked her, or I didn't click with her, I didn't think it was right, there would have been room in the school to be like, hey, can I be assigned to someone else? So like, because I was part of that, it made it a lot easier. A
Yeah.
lot of people, it's very challenging. How do you find a therapist? You ask maybe your friends who they like, which is weird. I wouldn't want any of my friends to have my therapist, but that's how else are you going to get referred? And then they're busy, they're full, so they recommend someone else. Oh, but this person's $380 for 45 minutes, and you're like, well, I can't afford that. So it's all until it ties to health insurance in America, and health insurance is already a problem, let alone tying mental health to that is a problem in and of itself. And as long as it's this expensive thing that's hard to grasp, it's going to be increasingly relegated to rich people doing it, and the libs, and so it'll be disrespected because it's not available. And if you can't get something, you're going to talk it down because you don't want to feel bad. So it's all tied to so many problems.
Yeah, that's true.
I also think, like, as destigmatized as therapy might be, I feel like there was the West Wing. There was a popular show called The West Wing about it's just about the president and the government. And there was like some episode where it was almost revealed the president went to a therapist, and they were like, we can't let America know. And I do think in my mind, to my knowledge, no president has publicly said I go to therapy. And things like that, I think, would shift the narrative. If Donald Trump had gone to therapy, mental health would be on the rise. America would be, he might be better, everything might be better. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I agree to that. How did therapy help you? Are you still seeing a therapist? I believe
Yes,
there
I'm
was
still
a time
seeing
you were seeing
therapist.
it online. Are you still going online?
Oh, yes, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing my therapist over the internet. She told me that there's an option to start doing it in person again. And
For you.
yeah, it's very tough. I think in person is way better, but it's become so convenient. It's really tough for me to go, yeah, let's leave my living room, take a 45-minute train up to your office, 45-minute train back home.
Yeah.
There's to counter my argument, like I want everyone to be in some form of therapy. I'm very skeptical of some of these online therapy programs. I just feel like the internet makes everything a little bit better and then way worse. That's kind of the trajectory. It's like Uber, it was like, oh, cars are convenient. Then they treat their workers terribly. The pricing is rough, blah, 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 blah. So I'm worried with online therapy. It's like, around the holidays, everyone gets a little bit extra depressed. So there's going to be surge pricing. And all of a sudden the therapy will cost more. Or there'll be like a therapy where they're like, we'll just throw 10 of you guys together who have mommy issues all in one group just to make it a little bit cheaper. So I get nervous. It could be good, but I get nervous. I don't know if you saw, did you see there was a tragedy with, there was a concert in Houston that got too crowded and these people died. And part of the artists sorry was to offer any family members of the victims a free month of BetterHelp therapy. And so the more mental health becomes commodified, it might become more available, but it also dilutes what I think can be the personal connection of you and a therapist. So it's a tough balance.
Well, I totally agree to that. I personally love in-person meetings, in-person
I love it.
in-person
way better.
Coffee
Way better.
variations, everything, because I'm an energy person. So I connect with people through energy.
Sure.
And it's a bit more challenging online. So I agree to that. So tell me more about your therapy experience. Why did you go to therapy at the first place and how did it help you?
Yeah, so I first went as a kid, and this is where I feel like I didn't have great therapists, or I just might have been a kid who wasn't in the mood. I think I was just a little lonely at school, a little bit awkward. My parents got divorced when I was a baby, and it was a contentious divorce. So they clearly saw a need to send me, and I just didn't want to talk about anything. I was a kid. I would be playing with action figures, and the therapist would try to interpret what I was doing with the action figures. He'd be like, "Oh, is the Red Ranger your father and the evil bad guy your stepdad?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm just playing. I just don't want to talk to you." And I was also skeptical, I think, of therapy because both my parents were in therapy, and I said, "Well, clearly this doesn't work." And it wasn't until I went through a breakup after college. It was someone I dated for 5 years, and then breakup. She married someone else, and it was just a real shock to the system. It was a real just so depressed. I still got out of bed. I've never been that kind of depressed, but just so sad, didn't want to socialize, was bumming out every party. I mean, when I got to the party was over. And I think I had a mutual friend with my ex, and because we had all gone to college together, and he said she had kind of stopped speaking to me entirely, and he kind of, as a carrot dangled in front of me, said, "I will talk to her about, talking to you on the phone if you go to therapy. And even then, I don't think I did it. I don't think I did it. I don't think I did it because I still was like not ready. And you know what it was? I remember at the time, a big part was like, I felt really sad about the breakup, and I thought my feelings were very legitimate. I thought my sadness was appropriate. And I'm not even saying it wasn't, but that's how I felt. And I was worried that therapy was going to undermine the pain that I felt. I was worried the therapist was going to, with more words around it, be like, this isn't as big a deal, or I understand you miss this woman, but you actually are mad about your parents' divorce. And at the time I was like, I disagree. You know, this is all in my head. No one said this, but I was like, if they say that, I'm going to tell them you're wrong. In my head, I was like, I disagree. This is about the pain I feel now. And there was something about sadness where like, I didn't want anyone to tell me that sadness wasn't real, or that sadness was like actually about this in a condescending way. And I think that was my hesitancy. I was like, I don't want you to take away, even though I was sad about it, I don't want you to take away the love and the pain I feel about this person. And that's why I was very resistant. You know, when it was the worst, that's when I should have gone, but I was very resistant because I said, I don't want anyone to take this away from me. And then after a long time, I found this White Institute with the discounts, and I was also acting a lot back then, and I wanted to be more connected to my emotions. So eventually, I went, and I didn't feel that fear. What I was scared of didn't happen, and I'm sure there are some not great therapists who might have talked to me in that way that would have been like, hey, you're telling me I'm not sad, or you're telling me I didn't love this person. And I felt like my therapist was gentle with it, and let me express those fears, or those I was able to fight.
So all you needed is someone to listen and be compassionate.
Yeah. And I really and I still feel like I'm like this. It's always a challenge though, with like, I tell a lot of white lies, you know, throughout the day. I'm late because I say it's because of the trains, or especially when you're like an actor and a comedian, you lie to get out of things all the time. And like, I wanted my therapist, I wanted to be as honest as I possibly could. So if I was late because I didn't leave the house in time, I was like, I am not going to say it was the trains. I don't even want that lie. If I'm late because I decided to leave late, I'm going to say that. If anything, like even the small things. And I found a person that I think handled me gently when I was in this raw period, and respected my feelings. And of course, said, you know, well, let's talk about your parents and whatnot, but respected that I was also upset about this thing. And I wasn't just like, you know, foolish or silly or misattributing my pain for something or other. And that felt good.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. It's a very interesting point, because now you just revealed one side of therapy that people really don't go there. They don't talk about that side of therapy, that some therapists, I'm not saying they have the wrong approach, but it's just not for everyone. So it's very important that you do take your time to find the right therapist and see what works and what doesn't work for you. Especially for men, I highly focus on men in that area, because you just briefed it in one sentence, is that all I wanted is someone to listen and tell me that my pain is legit. I don't care what other things are happening, but this is what I am in this situation. So don't tell me otherwise.
And
so
you
I'm
don't
happy.
have to like, you don't have to like, just because you go to therapy doesn't mean you're going to have to become a different person. I think like there's some people who are like, like let's say my friend who does who does some of these, who does drugs, like some hard drugs. I think in his mind it's like, oh, if I go to therapy, I'm also saying I'm never going to partake in this. Now look, I hope the therapy leads him to a place
Amen.
where he doesn't rely on the drugs, or maybe he does some
Amen.
softer drugs. But you can go to therapy. Going to therapy doesn't mean, is not the same as going to, I don't know, Alcoholics Anonymous, or like you can go and talk to someone while you're doing or feeling these other things. And it doesn't mean you have to get rid of it all at once. It just is talking to someone about it. You can talk to someone and continue your bad behaviors, or, you know, however you want to phrase them, you can continue all your behaviors if you want to. You don't have to change anything. It's just talking about it and how you feel about it. And maybe you'll go, you know what? I feel great. I feel great about the way I'm doing everything. Then great. But it's just about you and your feelings. And a good therapist, in my mind, is not someone who's going to be prescriptive. My therapist talks about that a lot. They're not going to be prescriptive. They're not going to tell you what to do. It's about what do you want to do? What do you really want to do? And maybe what are the things you're doing that preventing the things that you want to do? So yeah, that's be my pitch.
I love that. Well, there is a link. I don't know the explanation behind it, but there's a link between comedians and depression. We hear about a lot of comedians who are depressed and they are really, really good in their job. Robin Williams is one of them. Louis C.K. is one of them. And it makes me think, does one need a mental struggle to be funny?
Well, I think my counter to that is I know some of the least funny people I know are pretty depressed too. So I don't know if it's a direct connection, but no, I do think there's a certain degree. Jerry Seinfeld, he always said, like, his rebuttal to that theory, which I don't disagree. I don't disagree with the theory fully, but Jerry Seinfeld said, yeah, the milkman's just as depressed. He just doesn't go on stage and talk about it. And I think there's a certain degree of fairness to that. I think depression can lead to comedy only because when you're on the outside of anything, it gives you a perspective that lets you think comedically. Like I think I joke about my parents' divorce and marriage because my parents were divorced. So I was like,
but you do quite a lot on your social media. Like most of your videos are on your parents' depression.
Yeah.
Divorce.
And I think it's because I have sadness from that or depression, I'm on the outside. I'm like, if you're Christmas morning, you're hugging your family and you're opening presents and you're just snuggling, you know, you're in the moment of that. There's not anything funny. You're enjoying your life. If you're depressed and everyone's fighting and you're just kind of sitting on the couch watching it, you see things. Yeah. You notice things that if you're like in it, you might not fully notice. So sometimes I think being depressed lends itself to comedic thought. It gives you ideas because you're again, if you're in the party, if you're in the middle of the dance floor, you can't see how goofy people are as they're dancing because you're dancing, you're having a good time. If you're depressed and you're sitting in the corner drinking, you're like, look at these idiots, and all sorts of funny things come in your mind. So that's where I think, like, I don't think you have to be depressed to be funny, or I don't think being depressed makes you funny, certainly. But I think being depressed lets you look at things in a way that you can find funny if you're inclined to that. Yeah, but I also think there's plenty of depressed people out there with no sense of humor.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a nice perspective. Now, speaking of your parents' divorce, I also come from a divorced family. How did that affect your relationship? So you mentioned that your girlfriend has traveled. How are you coping, or how are you dealing with therapy, relationship, divorce?
I think my parents' divorce and their subsequent divorces, they've both been divorced twice, it just makes me very skeptical of marriage in general. And I think everyone is. I think these days more and more people are generally like, well, this is a tough proposition, but it just makes me extra cynical and thinking about it where it's the whole thing seems kind of pointless to me, or it just seems like you really have to recontextualize it and not think of it as a forever thing. It could be, you could die any moment, but like think of it like this is working right now. What would make it in the moment?
You reminded me, you reminded me of my friend. So my friend is recently dating a guy, and he was like on a very romantic date. He was like, "Do you promise that you're gonna love me forever?" And she looked at him and she was like, "Uh-huh, I promise." And she came to me and I was like, "You promised forever? How would you do that? How do you know that?" And now every time we hear the word forever, we just
Yeah,
laugh. I do agree to some extent that marriage is just something that the society invented, so they just um, keep people locked in a circle, in a system, in a box or something. But for me, as long as you know why you are in a relationship, you're getting your needs met, you're feeling what you want from that relationship, and you have the basics of like respect, communication, fun, whatever that is you want from a relationship, then why want more? I don't know. That's how I think.
totally. I think it's more like where it becomes more complicated is like kids. I mean, that's where like I definitely am much more I don't know if I want kids. I do like kids. I'm not one of these like I never want kids. But I think like marriage to me feels almost like, oh, who cares? Marry, don't, whatever. That doesn't matter. You break it, it's over. You're two adults, you move on. But kids is where it's like, man, you gotta it's such a gamble because the number of people who think they're rational human beings, and if there's a divorce, they'll be good parents and they'll co-parent and they'll do well. I mean, the relationships I've seen crumble, whether it be like firsthand with like my mom and stepfather who had a very acrimonious divorce, or friends, and that's where I would feel the more pressure. Marriage, I don't know. If I was with someone and they really wanted to get married, I don't think I want it, but I could see me getting bullied into it at some point and going, fine, we'll do the dance. I'll put on the suit.
You?
Would I? I don't
I don't know.
know. I
You
don't
don't come off
know.
as someone who would do something, at least now. I don't know. I've been talking to you for the past 30 minutes. You don't come off as someone who would do something you're not comfortable with.
Uh,
Or you're gonna make
yeah,
more
like
jokes on stage.
it would definitely be like a funky wedding. Like there would be a lot more. Everyone would be in shorts. It'd be like, you could drink before the ceremony. Um, I I I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I can know. I definitely think like if I did, it would be the woman's initiative, at least with me. I don't think I'd be clamoring for it. Like I'd more rather be like, we'll call it a declaration of love day.
Yeah.
But I also can see friends being like, well, we're not going to all come to that. That doesn't sound as important.
That's fair.
Um, but no, like a wedding to me is because to compound it, I would never have an important day that I would invite my father and mother to at the same time. I would never. That's a nightmare for me. That's the opposite. I don't know if there will ever be another thing in my life aside from, if I die before they do, where they'll be in the same room together. And that's fine with me. Even then, I'm going to have rules, two separate funerals, one for the mom, one for my dad.
Now you're
It
joking about it, but are you really okay with that?
No, I mean it's sad. It's sad, but it's just a
Yeah.
reality. I mean, my bigger concern. There was a time when I was a kid that especially like with school and like paying for school and extracurricular activities, it was very stressful because my dad would not talk to my mom anymore, and it was tough because then I would have to like talk to my mom, bring the info to my dad, see if they're all on board for this thing. And there was a time where I begged them to talk and communicate, but it's done. That ship has sailed. So right now, my main concern is like, can I have an okay relationship? My mom, we're having a good relationship. My dad, that's a tough one. that's a tough relationship. And so it affects like my views on marriage and what, because like I don't have, a lot of people get married, it's connected to their family. A lot of people get married for their parents, or they have a religious wedding for their parents, or they have kids partially because
I want to
they
see your
want
kids
kids,
before I
and
die.
yeah, they want kids, and maybe the parents will take care of them. So in a way, some ways it's happy, some ways it's deeply sad. I feel disconnected and maybe free of those pressures. So if I want to have a kid or if I want to get married, it's very much about me. It's very much about me and my partner. Now, my partner might have all that family stuff, and it might be hard for me to relate to it or like understand it. I might be like, well, fuck your parents. Forgive me. I wasn't sure if
No,
I
no,
could
no. On
curse.
the show, you can say whatever you
I
want.
might be, I mean, fuck your parents. And they might be like, oh, well, I actually am close to mine. And I'd be like, whoa, okay, weirdo. You weirdo. You talk to your dad. Um, so it's hard. It's hard. I don't know what it's gonna look like. I I never felt like, I thought I'd be fine. And then you get older and all your friends start doing it. And I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And I'm in New York, so it's still very delayed. Like if I go back just to Maryland, where I grew up, from my high school, a lot of people are married and have kids. My immediate social circles, most of them are actors, but now in their 30s, now they're starting to have kids. And I think a lot of that like draw to get married and have kids also is because like a lot of your friends get busy with their family, and all of a sudden you don't have
Left out.
friends. I think sometimes I think marriage is like, it's a friendship that you make them swear in front of a priest. Are you going to promise to hang out with me for
Yeah.
the next couple of years?
That's actually cool. I would go for that. Yeah.
Sure. I like that. That language is a lot nicer than do you take her to be your lawfully wedded. You promise you'll see the next Marvel movie with me.
Oh,
Please
yeah.
swear in front of your
And not
family
share my popcorn.
and not your.
Do you talk with your girlfriend about your vulnerabilities and your fears? Are you okay with, because you mentioned something that you're someone who tends to say white lies, just white lies. Is your relationship as transparent as your relationship with your therapist?
It's definitely not as transparent, but because I think that would be there'd be a lot of crying. But I definitely
What's
think
wrong with
like,
that? That's a very good point. What's wrong with that?
no, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just like, I think just to cohabitate with someone, sometimes you gotta say, be a little nicer than you might feel just to get through breakfast. Um, no, I definitely think like compared to the average couple, I'm sure we talk a lot, but it's always like it's a constant battle to for me to share how I feel, for her to share how she feels. Um, I think it when it comes to like the bigger questions, it's really hard. It's really hard uh, because I think maybe in their mind they think you'll change, and maybe in your mind you'll think they'll change, and things might be fine until one day. I certainly have a fear. I have a fear of someday it's like, hey, I want to get married, and I'll be like, we'll see where I'm at that point in my life. But I don't know if I'll feel like I feel now and be like, well, I don't. Or that day where like kids, where I'm like, I don't know if I want kids. And then someday, especially, and I don't envy women in this respect, where there's this clock where like, there's some men who have babies when they're 60. That sounds nice to me. There's not, I don't know any woman who's had a baby in their 60s. So with some, there's like this thing of like, well, look, you want to take your time and figure things out, 33-year-old man? Well, I can't. And that's tough. I have fear for that day for sure. A lot of fear about that day.
Wow.
But you just try to constantly communicate, and you hope you're always honest about it, and always open. And I think what's scary about like kids is we all get pressured into making decisions. And with a kid, it's like there is no decision in your life that ends up lasting potentially for the rest of your life. I mean, it's just like, there's just nothing like that kind of a commitment. If you could have a kid for 3 years, it's like, okay,
I'll
I can
sign
see
up for
having
that,
a
and
kid.
then here you go, take him back.
Sure, sure.
Listen, we do share the same fear. Like for me, ever since I was 18, I've always said, I don't want to have a kid. I don't want to be a mom. If I ever change my mind, adoption is an option. But and I've always been it backfired at me. Like, your clock is ticking. Are you stupid? What kind of woman are you? Don't say that. You're gonna change your mind. Guess what? I haven't. And just recently, I was on a date, and I was like, "Hey, listen, I don't want to freak you out. I know this is the first date and stuff, but in case things got serious, I don't want to have kids." He was like, "High five, woman." Me neither. I was like, "Cool."
Wow, that's so
So
great.
I feel that we were pressured as well in relationships to not talk about big things and postpone them, and just talk about it later until it's too late. I do believe that some big things like finances, getting married, having kids, dreams, ambitions, goals, whatever it is, families have to be discussed at an early stage of a relationship.
I agree. I agree. Well, I'll add on top of that. If the divorce taught me anything about finances, because I've seen the finances get so ugly, that there's a big part of me I'm like, I believe in a certain degree of independence, so that in my mind, if you get divorced, it should always be possible, so that you can. And this is from like my mom and my stepfather. There was just the relationship of where he made the money, and she, of course, did all sorts of things worthy of having some of that money. My dad was the one who talked my mom out of leaving law school to raise me full time. So, these things go back and they go deep, but like, there's this thing where he made the money. There's the joint account, who gets the money, and then so much of the contention becomes about money that I'm like, and my current relationship, I mean, I think right now she's kicking my ass financially. But if not, if one of us was the homemaker, I'm of the mindset that the moneymaker should literally give, if you're going to say half, go for it, half to the other person. I want people to have their own accounts. I want people to have the freedom, because no love is worth it if it's based on anything other than your wanting to be together. If you're saying, well, if our money's tied together, that'll help us, that's no good. I say you should both, if you needed to leave, if you wanted to leave, you have the freedom to leave. And only in that freedom are you going to find the true untethered desire to stay together.
I agree.
That's
I agree.
my philosophy.
Like, freedom for me is my top one value and priority. Freedom. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't have kids.
There you go. Of course. Absolutely.
Gianmarco, you have a podcast, The Downside, and I love the part when you said complaining is encouraged. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, so I wanted a podcast. I'm a touring stand-up comedian. Being a podcast is a big part of that. And I was nervous because I wanted to you record this stuff every week. And I was like, what's the mood what's something I'm going to want to do every week? I'm not always in a good mood. I sometimes am angry, bitter, frustrated. And so I wanted to create a podcast where like that is encouraged in a way where we don't have to feel bad about it. That I sometimes I'll be having a great time, and me complaining about it is me joking about it. It's me having fun with it. And someone will be like, oh, you don't have to be so negative. And I always know that I'm not with someone, especially romantically or friendship, where we're not going to click if that's their response to me. Because sometimes I'm like, oh no, I was having fun. So I wanted this podcast to be a place where like I encouraged people to complain and bitch and moan, and they wouldn't be judged for it, but we'll have fun with it. We'll have fun with those feelings, because I also think there is like uh, this weird, I don't know if this has always been the case, but with celebrities and with artists and creators like on the rise, sometimes there's just like this, they constantly have to express how blessed they feel and how positive, and there's just this thing where I'm like, I don't buy it. I think Ellen DeGeneres was such a perfect example where, all the stuff with Ellen DeGeneres,
Yeah.
but she was, her whole brand was positive. And then all these stories came out that this is the biggest asshole in Hollywood, that everyone has a story about her being mean to waiters and ba 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 ba. And I'm like, how weird that your brand is like, hey, I like to dance, and you're screaming at busboys. Like there's such a breakdown. And I also think sometimes people project this positivity, and if you're feeling depressed and you see someone faking positivity online, you're like, oh, they're happy and I'm not. And it's like, no, they're lying. And so I wanted a space where I could let my negativity fly, and where I could have people on and give them a space to be like, look, tell me all the things you're not happy with. You don't have to be grateful in front of me. I'm not going to say, hey, you should count your blessings. You should be free. And so that's why I did it.
Wow. First of all, thank you. We need more spaces for people to be okay with being themselves. I 100% advocate for that. And what you just called is basically defined as the toxic positivity. There's no harm of being grateful. I'm one of those annoying, extremely annoying people who wake up with sunshines and dancing and songs and, hey, it's a new day today. But when I am in a bad mood, when I'm having a bad day, I allow myself and I give myself permission to just be cranky and be moody and be all of that. Like today I'm having a bad day, but I would also remind myself of the things that I have, just so I don't let my mind wander so much. Like, hey, listen,
Sure.
You do have some things to be grateful for. It's just a bad day. Do something about it. I think it's the balance. And this concept of everything's gonna be okay, or cheer up, or stay positive is just BS. I believe it's BS. Stop pushing people to fake and to carry the heaviness of I have to be positive because that person is positive, especially when it comes from someone who has lots of followers or a big platform like Ellen, or whoever celebrity that is, who always comes off as I'm great, I'm fine, I'm happy, and then boom, divorce, boom, suicide, boom, and what the fuck happened?
Yeah,
So, yeah, thank you for that.
Of course.
Gianmarco, if there was anything you would want men to take away from this episode, what would it be?
I would just say, like, look, sometimes people they're like, in their mind, they're like, yeah, I'll go to therapy eventually, or yeah, I'll take care of this eventually. And it's like, don't wait for the big bad thing to happen for you to just start monitoring it. You gotta put it in the same category as your bodily health. You have a yearly checkup. You don't wait until you can't get out of bed because something is in so much pain. You got to check it out. And it doesn't have to be this intense thing. If you're like, I don't want to go somewhere and like cry about my dad, that's fine. You don't have to. You can just think of it as just going somewhere and talking with someone. But just do it. Just do it. God.
Just do it.
Everyone wants you to. Just do it. And
I
I never, and you might go, it wasn't for me. But I rarely do you see people who go to therapy and go like, yeah, that did damage. That was worse. I'm worse off for trying it. Most people are like, oh yeah, that helps with some things. I got to talk about it. Think of it like you just get to sometimes just complain. Maybe you have a roommate you fucking hate. Go to therapy. You can talk about the roommate if you want to. Get it off your chest.
100%.
Think of it as a fun thing. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to show up in therapy and go, yeah, my dad didn't say he was proud of me enough. You don't have to start there. You might get there, but you don't have to start there.
You reminded me, I think it was last year or 2 years back, someone called me and he found me somewhere. And he was like, I don't want to sign up for your program. All I want is one call. I want to talk because I've been searching and looking for someone to listen to me for a whole year. And I couldn't find that person who could dedicate 1 hour to listen to me. And he started crying. We spent like 58 minutes. I'm just listening. And then he was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And he hung up. Once that happened, I remember I cried my heart out. Like, how is it possible that the world is that mean? I don't get it. For me, it's common sense. When someone is going through a bad day, at least he has the right to have a circle of people listening to him.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So talk, people, and just do it. Thank you, Gianmarco, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.